Hello and welcome to an Eyewitness News special. We're coming to you from Nazareth, where we've been camped for the past few days, watching the ANC story unfold as it holds its 55th National Conference. For Eyewitness News, my name is Tshidi, Madia. I'm joined now by Editor-in-Chief Ngalwa. We all try to bet, we all try to figure it out. There was a top 7 announcement that came out today. People, at some point yesterday, the pendulum swung, and it felt like Zweli Mkhize's name would come out, but it didn't. Cyril Ramaphosa was successfully re-elected as ANC president.
You know, with a conference, I always say that sometimes what happens at plenary, like who's singing the loudest, which faction is the most fervent, is not necessarily a reflection of the outcome. Because until such time that someone has cast that ballot, you cannot call a conference. And I think in this particular conference, we actually, all of us thought that it would be very close. Because remember, in 2017, there were just 179 votes between Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. But the president this time, I can say, actually it was a comfortable win for him because he won it by over 500 votes. And I couldn't help but watch his body language as he ascended the stage and he took his seat. And if you contrast that with the highly emotive and expressive moment when he sat there in 2017 and his eyes welled up and he actually shed a tear. But if you saw him today, he was jovial, he seemed more confident, he was even, he even whipped out his own cell phone to take pictures of journalists, you know. So I think, yes, the outcome, we couldn't have called it, but I also do not want to take away how well Zweli Mkhize has done. He actually did very well and exceeded expectations of some of us, because until this conference, we thought that Cyril Ramaphosa was actually sitting comfortably looking at the nominations. So if you look at the work that was done, or the amount of ground that he has gained between the time that nominations were announced and now, he actually did very well.
He gained a lot of traction. There were provinces that were said to be Ramaphosa shoo-ins who suddenly changed position towards the end. But before I speak about that dynamic, let's speak about the composition of the top 7 that is there along with him. He's supporter, well-trusted ally. I always call him a pressure absorber in the ANC. Gwede Mantashe, I was quite surprised, was re-elected. Very tight margin between him and Stan Matabata, but he gets re-elected. You could figure him Balula. I think a lifelong dream, realized, becoming Secretary General. You've got Nomvula Mokonyane as the first deputy. You've got Marupini Ramokgopa as the second. And again, surprise, surprise, Treasurer General Gwen Ramokgopa makes it. Your views on the composition?
Look, I think this is the perfect top 7 for Ramaphosa.
I forgot about Paul Mashatile as deputy president. How dare I?
Maybe you're not locating him in that faction. But I must say, though, that this is the perfect top 7 for Ramaphosa. This is what he would have dreamed of in 2017. Because I've always argued that Cyril Ramaphosa in 2017 won the presidency, but not the conference, not the NEC. You know, he actually, the NEC was, in fact, at the beginning, it was an NEC that was heavily loaded against him in terms of the sympathizers of the then president, Jacob Zuma. But I think over time, and also through the, I would call it, the lack of political clout or lack of political wisdom of Ace Makashule, he kind of lost it along the way, which made it easy for Ramaphosa to consolidate. But this top 7 is what he would have dreamed of, because even though Paul Mashatile was not in his lineup, Paul Mashatile was never opposed to a Cyril Ramaphosa presidency. In fact, if you speak to those who are close to Paul Mashatile, they will tell you that Mashatile actually preferred a Ramaphosa presidency. Well, maybe at a personal level because they relate better, but at a political level as well. Because if he were to become a deputy president to, say, Zweli Mkhize, he'd probably have to wait another 10 years before taking over. But with the Ramaphosa presidency, well, it may well be a few more years, anything up to 5 years, you know, before he can take over. That's if he's elected as the president succeeding Ramaphosa.
They always say with the Ramaphosa angle, he's just a shoo away from the union buildings. You must never forget rather, the Palapala saga issue that still hangs over the president's head. I want to speak about the issue of the younger people, the relatively younger people in the provinces. But let's start with the younger people. there was an opportunity, when you look at Paul Mashatili's numbers, there was an opportunity for someone like Oscar Mabuyane and Ronald Lamola to work together to try and take over the deputy seat. They didn't. When you listen to insiders, Ronald became quite difficult to try and navigate because it didn't go his way. He also had his eye on that seat. But not only that, but even the Treasurer General, where you had Mzandile Masina and Pule Mabe up against one another as well. These are also traditional allies, also friends from the Youth League. What is your sense of how the Youth League is, the younger, I don't want to call them young because they're not really young. They're relatively younger people though.
Sure.
How do you make of what they did in terms of using the moment, trying to strategize to make sure that they get something? Because they left all empty-handed, and I think that that's a failure to find one another behind one message. I also think it's egos at play that got them here.
Look, as I said, the top 7 is perfect for a Ramaphosa. It works for him. But there was an opportunity here for the ANC to be seen to be serious about absorbing younger people into the higher echelons. Because if you look at Cyril Ramaphosa, he's well into, he probably hovering over 60, close to 70. The same with Gwedemandashe. Paul Mashatile may be younger than them, but he's as old as most leaders in the ANC. So Pule and Mzwandile, if you look at their numbers, if you had put them together, as they had sought to do, which I don't understand what would have happened, because they had a press conference, but it looks like the ballot paper still had Mzwandile's name.
Came
so
too late.
Pule would have won. Similarly, Oscar Mabuyane or Ronald Lamola, whichever way the Ramaphosa or Renewal faction had decided to back for the deputy presidency, had they gone with either one of them, and the other party, which is the other candidate, plays ball, they would have come very close to Paul. But if you add their numbers, they are still 5 votes less than Paul. But then you then work with other permutations and say, well, what would have happened if the 20 people who abstained had voted? We'll never know. But don't take away the fact that Marupeni Ntuli is pretty much the same generation as your Ronald Lamula's, because she also served Marupeni Ramokgopa, rather. Ntuli is his marital name. No, it's a marital surname, okay. Yes. So Marupeni was in the NEC that was elected in 2008 out of ANC Youth League. That was Julius Malima's NEC. So she's pretty much represents those young guns within the ANC. So it's not all lost.
Is it surprising though she was a name raised from the floor when the 7th official was agreed upon, and she comes up and she pretty much overtakes all these others to land there? Was it surprising, well orchestrated? What's your reading of that?
Well, I wouldn't say surprising, but maybe because she was not the original nominee, but also you can argue that there was no second DSG position to begin with. So the people or the candidates for the second DSG position were always going to come from the floor. But I'm not surprised, because remember when they disbanded the Women's League leadership, that she emerged as the convener, and most people, there were murmurs within the ANC to say that she's close to Ramaphosa because she's an advisor. But I must say, in her own right, she's a politician in her own right, having been in the NEC and the NWC of the ANC Youth League, and also as a diplomat. I think she's served in a number of missions, including in India recently. So she is one of those young leaders that are coming up within the ANC. It's just that she had not been in the limelight, and that she had not been in a public, under the glare of the public spotlight.
Marupeni Ramokgopa, she's the coordinator of the Women's League.
Yeah.
I want to speak about provinces.
Yeah.
We come back to Nasrec 2.0. Kwazulu-Natal leaves empty-handed once again. Previously I said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. They don't listen. They come back and they do the exact same thing, ignoring their very own Dumseni Ntuli, who was also already on the ballot leading. Actually, and then and look at them now.
I think KZN needs to do some serious assessment, and they must, when they head back to the province, I think they need to have a meeting or an RNPGC of some sort, a general council meeting, where they do a thorough post-mortem of how they play politics. Because what they tend to do is, one, they present this arrogance because they're the biggest province in numbers.
Hubris,
but also they also have a problem. They suffer from they also political brinkmanship, where it's all or nothing. You know, politics is about compromise. Politics is about negotiations. KZN's attitude in 2017 was KZN were the highway, and they came back empty-handed. They still were the biggest province, in fact, with an even bigger delegation than now. And they repeated the same. In fact, part of the unpopularity of Mdumiseni Ntuli and Sihle Zikalala's leadership as provincial secretary and as provincial chairman respectively, in fact, part of the criticism was that they had lost the conference. What now will become of Siboniso Duma, the current chair, and Peggy Mtolo, the current provincial secretary? Because like Mdumiseni Ntuli and Sihle Zikalala in 2017, they are coming back empty-handed, having been the biggest province. And I think that they could have done this differently. They had the numbers. They had the ability to lobby other provinces, but they could have said, okay, no contest, let Zweli Mkhize be the deputy of Cyril Ramaphosa and wait for his turn and then take over. Because in any case, had it not been for digital vibes, Zweli Mkhize was pretty much the shoe-in to be the deputy president of this country. Remember that year, one last point, is that Financial Mail even called him Man of the Year.
Absolutely. I was going to go back to that he was being modeled and presented and campaigned long ago as the right leader to come in and take the ANC forward. What does KZN then do? You speak about how it needs to go and assess. Rather, let me put it this way. What does the ANC then do? Because what you're starting to feel is KZN will possibly start feeling like a victim, further and further away from the organization as a whole. Is there something that the ANC needs to do? We're hearing about trying to give responsibility to some people from KZN so they don't feel like all is lost and they're forgotten. I mean, I worry about the fact that the ANC has leaders from Gauteng, I think dominant in that leadership in terms of geographical spread are people from Gauteng. I think that is an issue.
I want to argue that no one is from Gauteng, but anyway.
Some of us are born in this province. We are not the Makodukas like you. Leave us alone. The president of the party himself, very quickly, hold on.
Yeah.
Ramaphosa himself, when Limpopo claims him, says, thank you very much, but I'm from
then
Gauteng,
Soweto
so leave
claims
us
him.
alone. Yeah.
So, but the same with Nomvula. Nomvula's maiden surname is Mkhize. Nomvula Mkhize. She's from Msinga, actually, in KwaZulu-Natal. Anyway, coming back to KZN. KZN is actually a serious problem for the ANC because its problems are layered. But there's also the Jacob Zuma factor. You know, there is this former president who behaves nothing like a former president, who behaves nothing like a statesman, who actually is deliberately sowing discord and disunity and anarchy. So the ANC at a national level has a Jacob Zuma problem, which they're not dealing with. So to leave that to the provincial leadership is a bit unfair, because the people who should be dealing with Jacob Zuma, what emboldens him is that no one wants to touch him. But he behaves in the fashion in which he does, because when Ramaphosa was booed on the first day and was disrupted, it was actually at the instruction of Jacob Zuma, because he addressed a gathering in KwaZulu-Natal and says, when this president speaks, I will stand up and say, order, chairperson, order. And what were the disruptors saying here? Order, chairperson, order. So it's got those layers. Then there's the Jacob Zuma element, but also it's also the KZN arrogance, which I think stems from an inherent belief that perhaps KwaZulu-Natal should lead in the ANC. I mean, I remember when Jacob Zuma won in Polokwane. That was my first ANC conference, 2007. And the word then was that the ANC of Langalibele is back, in that the first ANC president, John Langalibele Letube, was from KZN. So I think there's the regional dynamic, which is also problematic when you look at us as a unitary and a democratic state, that could it be that there is no other leader good enough to lead this country in the eyes of KwaZulu-Natal delegates? I think the ANC has to confront that. They have to ask themselves those questions, and they have to seriously introspect as a province in terms of how they play. Because I think we're going to have another acrimonious 5-year term for President Ramaphosa, as we saw post-2017. Is it sustainable? I think not.
But speak to the issue of geographical spread. You might say no one is from Gauteng. However, what you have there is Ramaphosa representing Gauteng, Paul Mashatile, Nomvula Mokonyane, Gwede Mantashe. I always argue, you can say he's from the Eastern Cape.
Gwede's from
He uses that for, his politics for expediency. However, Gwera is from Boksburg. His politics are in Boksburg. You also have Marupini and Gwen Ramokopa, who also represent Gauteng, leaving Fikile Mbalula representing Free State. That's an anomaly. 2017, there was an agreement that having about 4 of them from Gauteng was a problem. This time around, you have even more people representing one province.
Look, I think the issue of the geographical spread tends to, I think it falls it into the periphery or into the background when you are fighting a conference, because it becomes about expediency, who better represents what state, what formation, or what interest group. And if you look at that makeup, actually, I mean, Nomvula was not on their lineup, but she ends up in that lineup, okay? Paul Mashatile was not in their lineup, but he ends up in their lineup. I think at the end of the day, our politics should probably be devoid of regionalism. You know, if leaders are good enough and 5 of them live in Johannesburg, hey, why not?
So be it.
You know, because no one is from Gauteng anyway.
Moving right along as a Gauteng resident, let's speak about the losers from this. Stan Mathabata, chairperson and premier of Limpopo, I think, carried himself in a way that is not expected of a leader of a province. Where your province makes a decision and you're seen sneaking off in the night. Stan Mathabata being seen at a caucus for Zolimkize. It's really at odds. And what are you saying about your branches? And we saw it in the Northwest as well, where Nono Maloi, chairperson of the ANC, moving in a different direction from what was agreed upon in his own province. What I think was interesting was seeing branches and regional leaders holding the line, saying this is what we resolved on, and we will not, because of late night deals, suddenly shift. Just your views of that, and also what happens to leaders like Nono, like TK Mliza here, like Stan Mathabata and Limpopo.
Look, I think, I mean, if you talk about the chairman in Stan Mathabata of Limpopo and Nono Maloi of the Northwest, actually, you can call it political skullduggery. I think it's political thuggery, you know, in that there are pronouncements that are made by official structures of those provinces to back a particular candidate. What do you expect? Because in politics, and part of leadership is also sometimes about articulating decisions and positions that you don't personally agree with. So to go against the official nomination of their respective provinces is actually ill discipline of the highest order. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, that's what I would expect the provinces would do, flowing from this conference, that much like I'm saying that KZN should have a post-mortem of sorts, that these 2 provinces of Northwest and Limpopo ought to have similar provincial general councils where they must call their leaders to account as to why would you change a mandate on the doorstep of conference. And I don't think, I know that Stan was recently elected, maybe this may be his undoing.
I'm almost done. Let's speak about the commissions. I've been asking people about commissions. I don't believe, and I think you pointed out as well, that ANC members are sitting in these commissions deliberating over issues that affect us on a day-to-day basis and the state of the organization. What is your sense about that going forward? Is that what will we get in those resolutions? Because at the end of the day, this conference is not just about electing leaders. On paper, it's meant to also deal with what does the ANC do in addressing South Africa's challenges and moving the needle as far as our society is concerned.
I know that when we say that ANC conferences are about elections only, people think that we are a bit harsh on the ANC, but the evidence of that is exactly what is happening today. Because shortly after the top 7 was announced, if you drive down Nasrec Road or coming to this venue, it's littered with delegates sitting outside having a good time, merrymaking and drinking. And I can tell you, those commissions, in fact, I bumped into one commission scribe who was originally from the SACP, and he was telling me that he's actually had to drag people into the commission, and he is in a crucial commission of economic transformation. So what you're going to get here is that you'll find a few intellectual ideologues will sit there, craft their resolutions that suit them, and those resolutions will find expression in conference. And what will you get? You'll get murmurs and then another revolt post-conference, where those who were not in conference or were not part of those commissions suddenly wake up to realize that unpopular resolutions have made it into the final resolutions. I think that's what is going to happen here. It's no different from other conferences, but I think fundamentally it talks to the death of intellectual rigor and also it talks to the quality of the cadreship and membership of the ANC, that it is not what it used to be.
And therein actually lies the problem that confronts the ANC. That's it from us. We will be back with you tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be an announcement of the additional members, that body of 80 plus people who pretty much are responsible for the life of the ANC between the 5-year gaps of conferences. That's the NEC membership that will be announced tomorrow. And there'll also be a closing address from President Cyril Ramaphosa as he closes this conference and moves forward from that. For Eyewitness News, my name is Tshidi Madia. That was Ngalwa. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you on TikTok, thank you for tuning in.